been a professional musician in Austin since 1968, which is what, about 2 years before you were born?
I was born in 1968.
Okay, so when he was born, I started working.
I didn't know that.
No, I'm sorry, I moved to Austin in
Sure about
68. I started gigging in 71. I was 14 in high school. And by the time I was 20, I kind of got immersed in the local Latin music scene, primarily jazz and Latin music. And I'm an original member of Bethel and the Fairlanes. And I met Mike Mordecai and Mitch Watkins and a lot of the early jazz guys. And Mike Mordecai created a Monday night thing that's still going on after almost 30 years called the Monday Night Jazz Jam, where he would invite, it used to be at Piggy's.
That's right.
Piggy's was the first club, which is now Manuel's on 3rd and Congress. And then it moved, Piggy's closed and it moved to various places. It ended up at Elephant, where it's been for some 15, 17 years. He started coming out when he was like 15 or 16. You take
So that would have been like 80, 85.
85.
School.
He started showing up with his hideous electric blue, painted blue violin, viola.
You're from Austin, right, Will?
Well, what do you mean by from?
Born here.
Born.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh.
I grew up here.
Okay. I'm from
I'm
Austin.
from DeKalb, Illinois. So
Okay.
came down to San Angelo in about 1972. So I got here as fast as I could. That's the Lyle Lovett song said.
Yeah.
But I met Steve. I came across his musicianship with the Mitch Watkins group in about '83. I used to go hear Mitch Watkins group at Symphony Square. And
Was you there the night that I ate the cookie with the ants on it? During Mambo's drum
Actually,
solo?
no, I'm not. I don't remember. I don't think I was there.
I will never forget that.
But it was an interesting situation. You know, there's this stage, and then between the stage and the audience is like a river. You know, so you sit, and the band's on the other
The
side.
moat.
The moat, exactly.
I'm wondering if that's what they got the idea for Sullivan's Ringside.
That could be.
Yeah.
But that's another story. And I was blown away by, at the time, the music was called fusion, which is a term that's kind of been thrown away, I think. It kind of gained a bad name. The idea was all kinds of music that were musical influences from jazz to Latin to classical,
Primarily
brought
rock.
together.
Originally
with
fusion was
Mitch
jazz and
Watkins.
rock. Yeah.
So I was just really drawn to this really neat sound. It wasn't just like a rock and roll thing. It was the leader of the band, Mitch Watkins, was the primary composer, and I was just drawn to the compositions. It was an instrumental group, so there wasn't a singer in the band. Steve played bass, trumpet, and he had a huge keyboard setup, so he was moving around from all these different instruments, and there's a lot of just incredible, passionate jazz improvisation that just literally blew me away.
Mitch is quite famous as a composer and producer and arranger now. Plays with everybody from fusion groups to Jerry Jeff Walker.
So that's our common thread. I think Mitch Watkins, in a way, that's the two of us. And I remember saying, I mean, it's kind of silly, but sitting, and looking across the creek there, that I was gonna, like, someday I'm gonna play with those guys. One of those silly kind of things you say when you're a kid. So.
That's usually how it starts.
Yeah, usually it starts like that.
So you're about 15 at that time?
Yeah, maybe 13, maybe actually 13.
Wow.
So not much farther after I had seen AC/DC in concert. So that was the highlight before seeing Mitch Watkins. Yeah. But I think that, I was really drawn to the musicians and the personalities in that band, and I just. You can't explain it, but you have a feeling, when you see, and a lot of great musicians have probably talked about this, or musicians period, that they have a feeling earlier in their career that, that there's something about a musical soulmate, finding a musical soulmate, and I knew I was going to play with Steve at some point, and Mitch. So it
wasn't but a couple of years later you started showing up at the Monday Night Jazz Jam with your hideous electric blue viola. And he would sit in, and honest to God, he was terrible, but he was persistent, and I liked his persistence. And we always let him play because even when he played, he was just terrible because he was young and it was a hard instrument. And we were all terrible when we were young. I mean, I remember when I met Mitch, the first band I was in, Mitch was 19 and I was 14, and he was terrible, and I was worse. But we played anyway. But you could hear the idea is I could hear that there was a lot going on upstairs, and so I knew if we all kind of just sensed that if we just let him evolve and helped him evolve, which is what the older players in town did for me. They heard me and I was terrible and obnoxious and persistent, and they said, yeah, but there's something going on, and if we just keep coaching him, and it's kind of the tradition in the jazz stadium. And in most stadiums, but especially in Austin, and there was a regular Monday rock and blues jam and a regular Monday jazz jam, and the older players would come play, and then these young cats would come sit in, and some sucked, and some were great, and some had potential, and also new guys in town. That's the other thing, is new guys in town would come there and meet and network, and that's how we actually found a lot of our current players, like Rob Casanel, and
absolutely.
Who else? Well, Matt Mewling. Just these new guys come to town. They're young and they're great players. And
that's the great thing about music and the art that it is that it's a collaborative art, and there's a social aspect to it. That it's always, or a collaborative aspect that's always attracted me, as compared to, say, art, or other arts like painting, when you're just in a room alone, or you're on a field painting alone. And I've really been drawn to what happens with chemistry between human beings. In a live situation. And music forces you to be present. This is something I've spent a lot thinking about recently, is when you play in an ensemble, if you find each other, like we found each other, our musical, in some sense you're brought together by an unseen force to grow as people, and you're forced, or you're maybe not forced is the right word. You're called. You're invited.
Another really interesting aspect of that being present is that
it's a zen. It's like a zen.
Like when I go hear players, or when I want to meet some new players, it's like you can in almost any other business you can work with people for a really long time before you really get to know them and find out what some of their flaws or geniuses or some of their.
As a human being.
Yeah, as a human being.
But
with music, and that's still true with us as people, as our personalities, but as far as hearing a player goes, almost any decent musician can tell you, they can go hear somebody, and within 30 seconds to a minute, I can tell how good a player he is and what style he has and how he plays with other people, and I can pretty much tell, like in an instant audition, whether he would work in a musical situation or not, or which musical situation he would work in.
I agree.
And that's true in music more than any other art form, I think. Because it is so collaborative. I can go watch 4 people playing together, and I can tell everything I need to know about each player in a couple of minutes. And go, okay, I'll never hire him. I'll definitely hire him. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out and see how he does in other styles.
It's actually a miracle that music ever gets created anyway. You know what I mean? It's not.